2, and 1. Welcome to Access Sports Weekly here on AccessWDUN.com. Bo Wilson beside this guy today, Caleb. Not Caleb.
Not
Hutchins.
Caleb.
Caleb is right there. This is Seth Chapman.
Don't even. Wow.
Let's start this over.
I suppose. That's the second time you screwed up the intro in 2 weeks.
Why do I screw the intro up? Okay, here we go. 3, 2. I know this is probably going to be the actual intro. Welcome to Access Sports Weekly here on AccessWDUN.com. Bo Wilson beside this guy, Seth Chapman, in the house today, and the other guy that's inside the little computer over there, Caleb Hutchins. Welcome, fellas. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. That's it. Great and good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's how it goes.
How it goes?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for asking.
You're welcome.
Yeah, no problem. So we're heading way into the season now. So week 8 is upon us, but week 7, that was pretty good. What do you guys think?
Oh, yeah.
We didn't have a ton of games in the area, but I thought the games that we did have had some really interesting stuff develop over the course of them. Obviously the one that jumps off the page, the North Hall White County game. North Hall going into overtime, winning that game as the underdog, really kind of flipping that region on its head. But I thought we had some other interesting results too. I don't think many people saw the Cherokee Bluff West Hall game being tied 7-7 midway through the third quarter. But West Hall played Cherokee Bluff really well, and Cherokee Bluff was just kind of able to sort of outlast them in that game down the stretch. But I also thought it was interesting, Bo, watching Gainesville struggle a little bit in the first half, especially defensively with Lambert, in a game that I think a lot of people were expecting Gainesville to kind of roll through. But Gainesville able to come out in the second half, played much better defensively in the second half, and won the game. So I thought there was some interesting stuff going on around the area last week. But certainly the North Hall White County game was the headliner.
So Seth was at the North Hall White County game. You talked to Coach Bishop after that game. Coach Bishop was an emotional coach pretty much after the game to his team, and also in the interview because, Coach Bishop said earlier in the week that they typically do not play well in White County, but they played really well in White County on Friday.
Both him and his players were both just incredibly emotional. It's just such a big win for them. And I remember listening to the kids and hearing them talk about just how they won this. They didn't win that on that night. They won it on, during their practices. They won it during those times when, they were pushing when they didn't necessarily have to go as hard as they did, but they chose to. They won it during those moments. That's what I kept continuously hearing them say. And Coach was just so proud of those kids. Coach Bishop was incredibly proud of his kids that time.
Well, one of the things, like I said, all week we've challenged our kids just to play the best and forget about the atmosphere, forget about all the talk, and forget about the fact that they had us at a 25-point underdog, and they did. And they just came out here and they played even-headed, and when they needed to make plays, they did. And I got to hand it to the coaches because we were able to make some adjustments and run some plays we don't typically run in the middle of the game, and our kids were able to execute it. So that was plus.
And I hear your kids over there, they're talking about showing up every day, talking about how they got this win in the offseason when they're showing up and they're lifting, when they're just practicing their hearts out. Talk to me about how much this means to your guys.
Well, I think it means a lot because one of the things we've always told our kids is that, I know people work hard, but there's not many people that do some of the crazy stuff that we do, and these things we call finishers after every workout. And they're brutal. They're designed to test your mental toughness and physical toughness. And our kids, they gut it through, and they do things that, I'll be honest with you, when I was a kid, I probably would never do. So those are the things that we tell them when it matters the most, and when you're in those situations, these are the things that happen.
We talked about this earlier on this show with Flowery Branch and the young defense and how they were developing. But Flowery Branch had a veteran offense to kind of carry them through that early part of the year. North Hall was young, extremely young on both sides of the ball. And you saw the results of that. They started 0-3. They really struggled. So to see them develop to this point where they're at now, where I think they're a real threat to win this region title. I don't know really how you could say anything else. I mean, I know a lot of people are thinking Cherokee Bluff and Dawson County, but North Hall's got a better record than Dawson County right now. now. North Hall beat Dawson County last year. I think this North Hall team is fully capable of winning this region title. And yeah, to see them play so well defensively too, because, White County scored 31 points, Bo, but think about this for a second. If Darius Cannon isn't on the field for White County, North Hall defended everybody else, all other 10 players, about as well as you possibly could. It was just Darius Cannon they didn't have an answer for. He had a great game. What did he go for, 260 yards and downs on the night? But I thought North Hall's defense played well also.
I would agree with that. And Darius Cannon, he is becoming that player for White County and becoming that elusive player. And of course, a few big plays for White County's offense in that game. But the biggest thing that hurt White County, and we talked about this on the podcast on Monday, penalties. If you look back at the penalties, they had 10 for over 100 yards in penalties, including that massive one in overtime when North Hall missed a field goal. They jumped offsides, giving North Hall the first down and more life. And then, of course, we know what happened after that. Luke Brown kicked the 17-yard game-winning field goal in that overtime period. So, North Hall, and talking to Coach Bishop, and he told me last week, he says, these kids are doing what everybody thought they wouldn't do, and they picked up 2 straight wins, as Caleb said, a very young team from the standpoint of varsity action. Now, we talk about young teams, and, yeah, he does have some underclassmen on the team, but, let's face it, North Hall lost like 19 playmakers, or 19 folks that made plays for them last year. And so to have to replace that with less experience, it's going to take some time, coupled with the fact that the non-region schedule was completely brutal for them, which perhaps prepared them for this moment. So North Hall definitely a contender in this region. And Caleb, I've talked about 7-3A as being one of those regions that's up in the air, and it definitely is way up in the air now that White County is 0-2.
Yeah, totally. And when you look at North Hall's non-region schedule, I don't think people thought that Stevens County was going to be a part of a tough non-region schedule, but they are. When you look at what County has done, they are hugely improved from what they were last year. Hart County, I know Hart County's got a rough record, but anybody who's seen Hart County plays know they're still a great football team. They just took Jefferson to the wire 2 weeks ago, and they just soundly beat and previously unbeaten Franklin County team last week. So that Hart County team is excellent. So, yeah, North Hall's non-region schedule was brutal. Speaking of brutal, on the White County side of this game, that's as brutal a loss as you can take. You have to think that might be it for their region title hopes, unless something really crazy happens at the top. I really don't see how a team with 2 region losses is going to win that region heading out. And White County is now in a position where they don't really have too much more wiggle room to make the playoffs. They got to play West Hall this week. And, we just talked about West Hall was tied with unbeaten Cherokee Bluff midway through the third quarter. White County can't take anything for granted now the rest of the way. They've got to string some wins together here. Otherwise, we're going to be talking about, late in the year, is this a White County team that is having to play for their playoff lives in the last couple of weeks of the year? And we know the last week of the year they go to Cherokee Bluff. You certainly don't want to have your playoff hopes on the line when you go to Cherokee Bluff. Obviously, still a question as to when Jabin Haynes might get back in action. But I got to tell you, Bo, I really think Riley Stansel has played fine, in the backup role. He's done some really good things. And, you talked about when he came in against Dawson County, that really they just kind of went to a run-heavy offense. And part of that probably had to do with the weather that was there that night. He was throwing the ball pretty well, and most of that was to Darius Cannon. I think we're seeing Riley Stansel kind of evolve a little bit in that role. Everybody still obviously is wondering about Jabin Haynes, though, because it's Jabin Haynes. And,
exactly.
So everybody's kind of got their eyes on when number 8 is going to be back in shoulder pads.
That is a massive key to White County down the stretch. When you're talking about Cherokee Bluff at the end of the season, you're looking at a potential playoff berth. So, but I will say Riley Stansel has stepped in and played well. Over 200 yards passing. Of course, most of those to Darius Cannon. I think one of the key things going to be for White County is that if folks continue or if folks start keying on Darius Cannon as that receiver, look out for Cooper Turner in that offense, because that's going to open him up, because he actually came into the season as the top returning receiver for this White County team. So, Of course, they've targeted him in games defensively. And now if Darius is the guy, is that going to give him a 1-2 punch on the other side with Cooper Turner? So that could be interesting down the stretch.
Yeah, and everybody, Bo, is talking about White County's lost 2 in a row. Well, Jabin Haynes hasn't been there. But realistically, Bo, they've got to improve defensively because, the last 2 weeks they gave up 42 points to Dawson County and 34 to North Hall. Their offense has scored 35 and 31 points in their 2 losses. If you're scoring in the 30s in your losses, to me that tells me that really your real issues you've got to get worked out are on the other side of the ball.
Well, Gainesville, as we talked about just a little bit a while ago, having some struggles with Lambert, which we knew Lambert was an improved team. We didn't know Lambert was that improved as, I think Lambert kind of, as you stated earlier in the week, and watching the highlights that we have from the first half of the game, Lambert really ran all over the field on Gainesville, and Gainesville was able to pull it out in the end in a big way. But, you look at this game in this region, as we've talked about on the podcast, Region 6-7A is also another one of those regions that is just up in the air.
Yeah, it looks at this point like South Forsyth is kind of the odds-on favorite, but look at the way Gainesville and Denmark are playing right now. Look at what North Forsyth still is as a team in the schedule that they've played, and tell me that any of those 3 teams can't win the region title. I don't think you can tell me that. West Forsyth played North Forsyth close. I still think there might be 5 teams in this region in play for the region title. And obviously South Forsyth, as I mentioned, the odds-on favorite. Gainesville, that's going to be their next opponent in a couple of weeks. But, yeah, this region's as good top to bottom as any in the area. And I genuinely have no idea who's going to win it. And I think Gainesville has put themselves in great position, surviving 2 really grueling battles with Forsyth Central and Lambert. Those were games, Bo, that could have gone either way. Those were games Gainesville could have lost either of those 2 games, if things didn't go a whole lot differently than what they did. And instead, they're 2-0. And when we look back on this season at wherever Gainesville ends up in the playoff standings, we're going to look back to these 2 games and say it was really big that they survived those 2 contests. But, yeah, it was good to see their defense bounce back. I think this bye week is coming at a good time for them because they have had 3 straight games, really 4 straight games when you go back to the Flowery Branch game, 4 out of their last 5 games because they had the blowout over Discovery that have been down to the wire. Everybody's holding your breath until the final whistle sounds games, and that wears on a team. I think this bye week's going to come at a good time, and it's going to give them a good chance to get prepared for South Forsyth, and I think that's going to be a really good ball game.
Yeah, and 2 really fierce region battles with Forsyth Central and now Lambert, and then South Forsyth on the horizon for the Red Elephants. Now let's shift into week number 8, and of course on the schedule, North Oconee is traveling to Flowery Branch in a game that Ben Hall said last week or 2 weeks ago about not overlooking North Oconee in this region. They have Clemson commit Bubba Chandler at quarterback. If you look at their non-region schedule for North Oconee, I think 3 of the 4 opponents' combined record is 16-2. So they played a pretty rough non-region schedule, but now they're 2-0 in the region as they roll in to Flowery Branch this week. Flowery Branch 0-1. So, Caleb, when you look at the Jefferson Flowery Branch game and you take and you kind of dive into the stats of that game, really the stats proved otherwise when you look at the score. It was a 40-10 score, but Branch had so many chances in that game.
They had a number of chances, Bo. That game could have been a 2-point game at halftime. Flowery Branch could have potentially led at halftime because there was another 4th down conversion besides the one at the goal line at halftime that they got stopped on. That game, it came down really, even though Jefferson won 40-10, when you go back and look at the actual tape of the game, that game came down to basically about 7 or 8 plays. But what happened was every time there was a key play, a key junction in the ball game, Jefferson made the play. Flowery Branch, I think, is going to be fine long-term as long as they can stay healthy. I think they're better than North Oconee. I think they can beat North Oconee this week. I do think this is the game that will decide the number 2 seed in that region, unless Cedar Shoals is able to upset one of them down the stretch. But this is a very important game for Flowery Branch, and it's probably the most important game that they have left on their schedule from this point out. So
Flowery Branch and North Oconee this week, AM 550. You can check that game out on AM 550. So, Caleb, any other games on this schedule that kind of pique your interest somewhat?
Well, Lakeview Academy and Kings Ridge is an interesting one because, I talked earlier in the year that I really think this Lakeview team can make the playoffs for the first time in school history. But this game against Kings Ridge is going to be a big key. Now, the question is, will the game get played? We know that Lakeview had to cancel their game last week because of COVID-19 situations. Will they be able to play this week? If they do, I think they can beat Kings Ridge, and it's a game they really need to win. So I've got my eye on that one. I also want to see on Saturday how East Hall looks after the long 2-week now layoff of not being able to really do anything. Can they go out and get the win over Chestatee? Can they pick back up where they left off? Because they're going to need to. They're down in an 0-2 hole now in region play because of the forfeits. So every game from now on out is one that East Hall absolutely needs. And they're going to have to play on a very short preparation period this week against Chestatee. And so I do want to see how they look on Saturday. I
think the answer to your question on East Hall, I believe they get back on the field today. So that will be interesting to see with such short prep. And they've done nothing for the last 2 weeks because of the full team quarantine. Also, Lakeview and Kings Ridge, that is a go today. That could change tomorrow. Who knows with that game, but that is an interesting game coming up. Okay, now, Seth, this is your segment of the show to just show off your favorite highlights.
Yeah, we only had 2 this week because unfortunately we had just, our 2 out there, me and Lauren. We had our 2 out there, but we still got some really great stuff. So here they are. You guys enjoy my picks, I guess.
Seth, you do a fantastic job picking your picks.
Thank you.
Selecting your picks. Maybe we should say selecting your picks.
It's just basically, and I'll reiterate what I did when we started this segment. It's not necessarily that I don't pick the most crucial plays to the actual outcome of the game. I pick what looks cool to me. That's how I've always been. And of course, if there's a pivotal play that we got that just has to be in there, of course it's in there. But namely, it's what looks cool to me.
Everything is cool.
But they look great.
Thanks, Caleb, from the computer from your home.
Okay, now it's time for your favorite part of the show where we name this week's
WilHart Team of the Week. You want to change it, but I'm not going to let you.
The big
Don't rock the boat.
All right, Caleb.
Don't rock the boat, Wilson. Don't rock the boat.
North Hall. I think it's got to be North Hall. I can't really, in terms of, we talked about it ad nauseum to start this show, the improvement they've made from the start of the year to go up to White County, knock off White County on the road. Huge win. They're back to 500 on the year. They're 2-0 in region play, and I think they're going to be a player in the region title run down the stretch. So North Hall Trojans, that's my pick.
Did you say ad nauseum?
Yeah.
Nerd.
That's a word.
It's too big of a word.
Huge.
Huge.
All right, Caleb. Almost called you Caleb again.
You did call me Caleb.
Okay, Seth. Who's your pick for this week's Team of the Week?
As much as I poke fun at Caleb, I got to agree with him. North Hall with that incredible win over White County.
I would agree, North Hall. You are this week's
WilHart Team of the Week. I don't know what the point of changing my voice is at this point. I'm in front of the camera now.
You are now. You are in front of the camera. Okay, coming up this week on the Jacobs Media family of networks, you can check out, once again, NOconee at Flowery Branch. That's on AM 550. Over on FM 102.9, White County hosting West Hall in another crucial Region 7 3A matchup. And then over on 94.5, The Lake, you can check out the scintillating action of North Hall hosting Lumpkin County. So check all of that out. And as always, guys, it was a great show today.
Oh, yeah.
Had a lot of fun.
Same here. Scrolling across the bottom of your screen now, you can check all our socials out, so I'm not going to read them. But go like them and subscribe to our YouTube page as well, as Caleb is showing how they're scrolling down below the screen at this moment. All right, folks, that's a wrap for today's show. For Caleb Hutchins, Seth Chapman, I'm Bo Wilson. Enjoy week number 8 of high school football.